Hi everyone, mic testing, 1 2 1 2.
Mic testing 1 2 1 2.
How does it feel, Rajiv?
Yeah,
to
feels-
be on a video shoot.
It feels awesome because it's you who's doing it. So always a pleasure interacting with you. I'm looking forward to it.
Super. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Uno Tumblr Stories. I'm still in Bangalore and loving the hospitality and the energy and the vibe of this wonderful city. For today's episode, we have with us Rajiv, who's the founder and CEO at Knowlescape. This is a learning and development company based out of Bangalore, right? And I've known Rajiv for many years now. So Rajiv, first off, thank you so much for spending time and your valuable time and energy for this show, and welcome to Uno Tumblr.
Yeah, thank you so much, Utkarsh. It's awesome to be connected with you again,
Right.
and I'm excited about this show and super energized. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you. I think we are really looking forward to hearing a lot of nuggets about your journey, right? So let's get started. I think it'll be great for everybody to just understand your journey and how it has been and how Knowlescape came about.
Okay, great. So a little bit of a backstory to answer that.
Right.
So I did my undergrad in BITS Pilani.
Right.
Then I went to the US to do my master's
Right.
in computer science, and then worked for a high-tech company in Silicon Valley for quite a long time. And one of those days, this thought occurred to me that all along I've been told that you need to get your engineering degree
Right.
and go to the US, finish your
This has
education.
happened with so many of us.
Yeah.
I mean, like
So
me
follow,
included.
Yeah,
So-
follow the crowd, and
Yeah.
people in the family have done it, and so
Right.
should you,
Yeah.
and all of that. So once you reach there, that so-called destination, and you are looking around, you're saying, okay, so
I've done that.
I've done
Yeah.
that. So now what? So that's when I decided to sort of get into things that I've always wanted to do, but because of focus on education and other things, I've never ventured out to do. So that's when I decided, okay, theater was on the list, high on the list. So I said, okay, there must be a theater group
Okay.
in California and the Bay Area where
Right.
there's a sizable Indian
Right.
population.
Yeah.
So I auditioned, got selected, and started getting into this theater circuit.
Okay.
And one thing led to the other, and I got into short film making
Right.
along with theater.
Yeah.
And this is alongside this regular day job. I was
Right.
having.
And which year was this?
This was 2001 onwards.
2001 onwards. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that experience revealed a lot to me in terms of what I was looking to do. On the one hand, I had this left brain kind of an experience
Right.
at Oracle,
Right.
technology and patents and all of that, which I
Right.
was thoroughly enjoying.
Right.
And weekends were devoted to storytelling, filmmaking, and
Right.
being on stage and comparing and.
Yeah.
So all that is live
Yeah.
mostly, and you get instantaneous
Feedback. Yeah.
whether the show went well or not.
Right.
You don't have to wait for the next quarter or the next
Right.
year. The product gets launched immediately, you know the feedback immediately, right? So
Quarter product launch.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
you go. Now you know what he's doing right now for a living.
that's right. So so that's the right brain, left brain
Right.
sort of a thing, and I think it's good for people to go through those experiences,
Right.
because otherwise you take everything for granted and it's
Right.
like go
Right.
with the flow. At that point in time, I had this conflict,
Right.
thinking,
Yeah.
hey, where do I want to take this next? Because
Right.
I'm enjoying this live thing, and I'm enjoying this R&D technology products and everything.
Right.
So is there a middle ground
Right. So you
to
marry
all-
both of-
marry
both of
both
them.
of those? Is the thought I had at that point in time, and I figured, okay. At that time, YouTube had just launched, I think,
Right.
and there were a lot of these platforms for short film makers, and I was a short film maker myself, and I was looking for a channel, and I said maybe that is the idea, but I had no grounding in business, and I was in Silicon Valley. I was watching a lot of other people doing startups, so I knew there is something behind that I should
Right.
be attempting, but then the idea itself was not well formed. I couldn't just leave my job and go plunge into it without clarity on what I want to do
Right.
next. And I was in the US at that point in time.
Right.
So that's when I decided to take a pause, think about what I want to do next. Maybe get an MBA while I'm thinking through this, and I'll be in that environment of business ideas, and maybe that will help shape
Right.
this. So that's when I went to INSEAD, went to
Okay.
Fontainebleau,
Okay.
then graduated Fontainebleau in France, and then graduated from Singapore.
Right.
Later.
And this was which year?
This was 2007 and 8.
2007 and 8. Okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
I was with that company for 6 years, 6.5 years, and then I went off to do
Right.
my MBA program. And during that program is when the aha moment happened.
Okay.
Because I think in the third or fourth semester, we had a software game that we were playing for a topic on HR, where we had to introduce a change into an organization or some such thing. And I was like, okay, you know what? I've worked at global multinationals. This must be an easy one. And I went in and I took decisions and I got poor scores. And I was like, this can't be real. What happened here? Why didn't I do well in this? I thought I figured it all out.
Right.
So I remember going back into the classroom, sitting in the front row, firing away questions at the prof.
Okay.
And that's when I caught myself thinking, when have I ever been this active in the classroom? Ever.
Right.
From childhood,
Right.
going to school, to college, and now I'm doing my master's or MBA. When have I ever been this active? I'm usually the backbencher and doodling away and things like that. But so that's when it struck me that there is something about this methodology that brought the right learning environment to bring out the right learner in me.
Right.
And I was curious. As a learner, you need to be curious. You need to ask questions. That's when learning happens.
Correct.
And I was doing other courses at the same place, and I was not as excited.
Right. But in that particular class and that particular moment, you kind of felt
The connect because learning is in my hands.
Right.
Nobody else is talking down to me saying, you know what Walmart is doing or Apple is doing. It's someone else's story.
Right.
And I'll appreciate it cognitively. I get what has happened.
Right.
But this is hands-on.
Yeah.
And there is an element of gamified learning. There is a heart involved. There is head involved because you're trying to crack the game as well.
Right.
So the head, heart, and the hand,
Right.
all coming together in a learning format. Very few learning formats are able to do this.
Do that.
And that I found is the right recipe for building better learners. Right? Forget about building better learning courses. I think we need better learners. So I think that was the aha moment for me, and I vividly remember this was towards the end of the entire program when the placement season had started and all of that. That's when I told myself that okay, now this is it. In a way, the two things that I was looking for, one technology-led idea, the other is storytelling. Because this game had a lot of storytelling, office politics and this and that, but you're the protagonist. You're the hero of that game. So it sort of brought back a lot of metaphors from my theater and movie making, and I could see, this could be a great format to engage a lot of people. What I would have loved to do through filmmaking or theatre, I'm doing it in a different format, and education is anyway something that I was passionate about. So that was the light bulb moment or the aha moment, saying, okay, this is it. Technology and storytelling coming together. So that's the moment where I vividly remember saying, okay, now I'm not sitting in placements. And the context also plays a role. This was, by the time I graduated, it was 2008.
And then the Lehman...
all that was happening. And in a way, it's good because opportunities were hard to come by. So it sort of made my decision a little bit more easier, saying...
There's anyways nothing available.
Might as well. I knew I didn't want to go back to an opportunity that did not satisfy this need, the creative need and the intellectual need that I had. So I was very clear I'm not going, because that option always is there. I could have gone back. I was on a sabbatical. I could have gone back to the organization. So I didn't want to take anything that comes my way. So in a way, this decision sort of fell in place. That's how it started. And then this was in Singapore, and I had started this company there. And first time entrepreneur, nobody in the family has been an entrepreneur.
So coming to that, I mean, how did your family take it? How was it?
Yeah, they were very supportive. The only thing I remember my dad asking is, are you sure about it? Right? And he comes from a banking background, obviously risk averse and all of that. And all he asked me was, are you sure about this? Is this what you want to do? Mom is always supportive.
Moms are the best. Always supportive.
So, and that's probably the only question he asked. And then it's been like right till now, they've been supporting this journey, and incredibly grateful for that. And the strongest pillar I've had is my wife. and she was working in California at that point in time.
So you were already married at that
time, and I had started, and she got a transfer to Singapore, and
right.
So for a good 1 to 2 years, she was sort of making sure that everything was in place, and I was given that opportunity to experiment. So that, I think, that safety net is very important psychologically speaking.
Family support is, I think, crucial to this whole journey, and not only from the point of view of when you are starting off, but also from the point of view of the emotional support that you need.
The highs and lows that you go through.
Lows, I mean, I was, I was coming here. I was on my way to Bangalore, and then I kind of, messaged my wife. I said, I don't say it that much, but thank you. I'm able to live my dream. You yourself are on a 5-day work week.
Right.
You've got 2 young kids. But I know that you're there, and you're managing the whole stuff, and so I think no doubt.
So that emotional support, psychological safety in a way, and the safety net as well. I think those one way or the other, if the entrepreneur is able to take care of in the initial days, it just gives you that much more confidence to go out and play your game. Otherwise, you're holding back. And you're not doing the right thing for the business. So I think that initial motivation you get, the safety net you get, really gives you the confidence to go out. So I think that was the founding story. In a way, still grateful. Decade or more later.
When did you start formally?
Formally started in 2008. So it's 8. Okay. So it's 15 years now.
Okay.
But then the first few years, we were focusing on the academic market.
Okay. And you were based out of Singapore?
Singapore at that time.
So you were registered in Singapore, and you were based out of Singapore at that point.
And the initial idea was to work with academic institutions, universities, and helping them create immersive learning, for the classroom or executive and stuff.
And when you say immersive learning, then this was around using videos and animation and
slightly different. So we were big believers in the whole idea of gamification.
Okay.
So these are game-like environments. Not really videos or animated e-learning, which was already there at that time. The breakthrough we had was, can we put people through a real life, the simplest way to explain this is like a flight simulator for a pilot, right? So you can read a book all you want, but you need to go through the rigor of flight training before you can actually fly a plane. So that's the idea, right? How do you create such safe environments for managers, leaders, students at that point in time to create that safe simulated environment? So these are simulations that we're talking about.
Right. Got it. And you were doing it only for
academic
institutions. Okay. And then what happened? Then you decided to move back to India?
Moved back to India because we were anyway serving the global B schools, and we had a chance to. That's the other thing, right? After my MBA got done, I was still interacting with these profs, and my real learning actually happened there. I think trying to understand what is their point of view and how to productize it. Right. So when you create a product in the learning space, a few things have to fall in place. One is the domain understanding. If it's leadership or finance or supply chain, you need to understand what that is. And then obviously the technology element, right? How do you create that experience? And that's instructional design, learning design, because the concept itself could be quite complex.
Right, and that will happen, right? And also that will change from case to case basis, right?
So how do you know how to present it to a learner in a way that they will understand? They are not at the same level as the expert.
Right.
So that translation process into a product that resonates with people.
Right.
I think that's an important translation that has to happen. And of course, the whole technology element. How do you create it as a mobile app, or if it's a simulation, how does the user experience work? How do you scale this for many thousands of? That's a technical or technology part of. So all the three elements have to come together to create a great experience. So luckily, I could do part of it, and I had a co-founder at that point in time, Vijay, who knew the technical aspects. And although I come from a technology world, I did not have the same depth that he did. So it was a great marriage of two minds, and we were able to cater to different B schools, and we had started this from a global perspective, from one B school, and it's a closely knit community.
Right. So you get references, and you can navigate your way through.
So we had a great time building these products for different B schools, and great fun seeing
executives
from CXOs of organizations using our products at INSEAD and MIT.
Right. So they'll come for these programs, and,
Yeah.
and then they will use your software
That's
to
right.
learn.
That's right.
Right. So that must have been a high.
Right. And watching like the CEO of a company using your product and being there in a closed environment like that and watching how people use it.
Right.
Sometimes there's a green button which says submit. You have to enter something there and submit. And maybe at that time user experience was
Right.
not that evolved, and there were people who were not tech savvy CXOs. They would search the entire screen. What do I do next? Right. Watching for a 20-year-old using the product to a senior executive using that, I think, were formative days for us. What works, what doesn't, and even till date, that is holding us in good stead. When people look at our products, they know that UX is like far superior. I think that immersion. This is design thinking at its best.
Absolutely,
right? Because you are observing what people are doing with your products. You're not like removed from it.
Right.
And what happens before, what happens after, what's the entire arc of that learning? Because you're playing a part in that, but what's the entire story?
Right.
Knowing all of that gave us great product ideas. Oh, there is a product idea, there's a product idea here. One thing led to the other, and very soon we knew we could do this, right? We were dependent on the academicians at some point because they had the thought process around it.
Right.
But once we got the flavor of how to put the three things together, speaking about the concept, the learning methodology and the technology to it, then we were like confident of creating our own products. That's when the pivot happened, saying, okay, CXOs of companies are using our products.
We can sell to them directly.
Right. So that pivot happened. That's when we moved back to India. Started setting up the center here.
And this was when? Which
2012, 13 time period.
Okay.
So this avatar of Nowscape is about 10 years old.
10 years old.
Yeah. So that's when we also started pivoting to the corporate learning side. Yeah, and a lot of unlearning had to be done, because when you do an academic focused thing, so their experts speak in terms of marketing, finance, and supply chain. So it's all their course curriculum based. Nobody speaks the language of competencies and business and like what is a business outcome. Nobody asks that question.
Correct.
So but when we were pivoting to the corporate side, that's something that we had to learn. What are competencies, new things, and so the language that we were using in the product, it had to cater to a different audience, and the topics were also different. Like suddenly we had to think in terms of business acumen. So in a B school, nobody teaches you business acumen. It's either finance, it's a marketing,
specific streams. Basically,
so here it had to be multidisciplinary, and for that our learning has to be different in terms of the concept itself. But then we were interacting with experts in the environment, and that is very important to build that ecosystem. You can't do everything yourself, so getting that ecosystem partners really helped us. So then once we started focusing on the corporate side, the big companies started taking notice, because at that time millennials as a keyword was trending, right? New workforce, and they wanted a different form of learning, and digital learning was just coming in at that time, and gamification was a big keyword, and we were pioneering that space in India, almost creating a category for gamified learning in the corporate. So one of the initial challenges that we faced is when you are creating a category, right, in a traditional space like learning, and people have that notion that it has to be sage on stage, chalk and talk kind of a thing, and that's when learning is complete kind of a thing. It is okay to have some fun in the classroom. Initial days, I remember people saying, "You mean our managers will have fun in the classroom?" Right, because for us learning is serious.
Hilarious.
So those were like mindsets that, because I think right now it has changed dramatically, right?
Totally.
But a few years ago that sentiment was there, that you can't mix learning and fun. So are you diluting the essence of what you're trying to But the point that we were trying to say is, if you're not even able to engage people, right? Using some hook, gamification is a hook. What learning are you talking about, right? And so it's not durable. People will not remember it. They will not recall. Forget about applying that learning back in the job. After a couple of days, they have even forgotten they were in this room.
Absolutely. I remember my training sessions, and with all due respect to everyone, I don't remember anything from them. I just remember that there was a very, very sleepy kind of session that I used to have, where we used to just wait for the session to get over and then go back home.
So even till date, when I think about that particular game that I played as part of my MBA course, right, I vividly recall every screen that happened, right? It's the power of learning. That's experiential learning, or learning by doing, instead of learning by listening. We all know we tune out after 5 minutes, right? And then just like learning curve, there is something called the forgetting curve. We never speak about the forgetting curve. We conveniently forget that. Learning curve obviously takes time to learn stuff. Forgetting curve is dramatic. What people say is, and there is some research around it, after about 40 minutes, I'm not even talking 2 days later, after 40 minutes, you quiz a person. What did you hear in that session? What did you learn from it? They say about 40 to 60% of that learning has evaporated.
Already gone.
Because that's how poorly we retain, right? And so what happens a day after? It drops down to about 20%. 2 days from there, maybe 5%. A week from then, maybe 1%. Month later, you've forgotten that you were even there. So, learning has to be an experience that sort of creates that recall value, right? And then later on, when you face that situation in life, that's a muscle memory you've built. You're able to apply that back in that situation, right? That's when learning is complete. If it doesn't allow you to go back and apply that learning when you need it, that's learning for the teacher's sake, not for your sake. I think those were the formative days of understanding what works, what doesn't in the learning space, relearning for the corporate environment. What really worked, I think the starting point matters a lot. The reason why some of the larger companies even took us seriously is we had worked by then with INSEAD, with a lot of these B schools.
All these brands
right?
Large,
so even though we were not a brand, that's a lesson I suppose when you're starting up. Brand association matters. While you're still trying to prove yourself, then the brand association can come through maybe credible board members, team members. It can come through brand associations. For us, it was really brand association. The fact that we had worked with these top B schools and we were able to talk about case studies of, hey, we worked on supply chain, we worked on this, we worked on that. We understand the domain, right? And we were able to throw like real insights. But then the way this was all getting packaged is interesting. They said, hey, this is great, right? The approach is okay. Like I said, there were some naysayers early days saying, oh, learning and fun cannot mix and you need to be serious and all of that. But the ones that were innovative, they latched onto it. They liked the product. But they said, hey, this has to be packaged in a traditional training program. You do this in the classroom.
Got it.
And that was a new challenge for us because now we need to get into delivery as well, or find people who can deliver it for us. So the pre and post, what happens?
So when you say delivery, then these are the classroom instructors.
Right? And at that time, online learning was not that. Even today, there are a lot of large companies struggle with that.
Right.
So we had to basically get that capability going. Earlier, we did not have to think about it.
Because it was all like
professor-led and all of that. They take care of the show.
Correct.
Right? Now we need to be doing the show ourselves. So that was a new capability we had to build, and very quickly we realized if we have to scale, we can't be delivering everything ourselves. We need to build a community of facilitators who can do it. So we got into train the trainer, keeping the product the same, teaching the art of using our products in the classroom to a lot of people. We started growing that network. That's how it got into that classroom-led model and some online-led learning as well.
Right. So from 2012, I think let's just take a pause here. So from 2012 and today we are in 2023, right? So how big are you right now? So what's
so we're about 150 members strong.
Wow,
They're larger, I don't know it's wow, but taken a lot of time. But really grateful for the experience. Extended network of many hundreds of facilitators. It's a lean model.
Right.
We focus tightly on product development and let the facilitators do what they are great at.
Right.
So it's sort of like an Uber kind of a model from that perspective. And we work with 400 plus organizations globally. We are in 5 countries.
5 countries?
Yeah. yeah.
So India and I think Southeast Asia.
Yeah. Singapore, Malaysia. This is direct presence in
Right.
US and UK.
Okay.
So these are 5 countries where we have direct presence in.
Okay.
And through a partner network, we are
Right.
in 20 plus countries as
Wow,
well. So these are
amazing.
reseller partners, strategic partners.
Amazing.
So that's an important learning as well. That one of the things that was very clear for us beginning, because I think the starting point shapes the way you think about
Yes.
a lot of things.
Yes.
I was at INSEAD, a global B school, and we were seeing students from 65 odd countries, and that's how diverse INSEAD is. In my own cohort back then, we had students from 65 countries. My own core group, there were students from 6 different countries, and it's very
very different experience.
Yeah, different experience. So I was always thinking about that, right? And I knew that the products we were building back then was working for a global audience. There's no reason why we should be limited
Right.
to one country. And right from the get-go, we were thinking of this from a global growth standpoint. So we started off in Singapore. Came to India, IT services as a segment took off because that's
Right.
where the volumes are,
Right.
knowledge workers,
Right.
more tech savvy.
Right.
A few years ago, that was
Right.
very critical, finding the right kind of a
Correct.
starting point.
Correct.
And once we built those capabilities, delivery capabilities, the next challenge that came to us is, we were developing newer products, but ultimately all of this was packaged in a training program, right? In a training delivery. So that always became a bottleneck in terms of scale that you can achieve, right? Although we were delivering great value, people were going through this, were saying, I wouldn't have learned this topic any other way. It was all great validation, but how do you reach that scale? So that's when we decided, okay, time to platformize everything we do.
Right.
And so then the pivot to a more, not a product and a delivery kind of a format, but more platform led, where by then we had created enough number of titles as well to go to organizations with a subscription kind of a model.
Right.
So that's when we decided to raise funding as well. This is 2016 time period.
Yeah.
And that's when the pivot to the subscription format actually happened. And we then started growing in different countries. Partner network started growing.
Right.
So then the growth started happening. Till then we were pretty much bootstrapped.
Okay.
Right. And so I was also very clear that till we find a great fitment.
Right.
Because till that point we were still delivering training programs in a more or less a traditional format.
Right.
Till we got that platform-led kind of an idea, we decided to just bootstrap, and then once the funding came in, we were able to build a team and all of that,
then scale up,
and then scale up from there. Yeah.
So tell me one thing. I think the HR and the HR tech sector, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crowded,
Yeah.
right? So there are lots of players, right? And obviously you don't think about those things when you start. You don't want to pick a sector which, I mean, this is all like, I would say, bookish gyan, right? And MBA gyan, right? You would have heard it in MBA as well.
Yeah.
You don't want to pick up a sector which is too crowded, there are cost pressures. You don't think about all of that.
Yeah.
You just do something which you really want to do, and then you just dive headlong into it,
Yeah.
right? But I'm sure as you went in, you would have realized that this is a crowded sector,
Yeah.
right? So there is obviously a lot of players, and how did you create, and you are a leader in this space, right? So how did you create that presence, go about creating that presence? Obviously it didn't happen overnight, it took some time.
Yeah.
But if somebody were to, some entrepreneur, young entrepreneur watching this, were to start in a sector which is crowded, right? How does he or she make a name for themselves in this particular, in that particular sector?
So I think clear understanding of how you are creating value. The operative word here is value, because you are in business to create value for your partners, for your customers, for your employees. That's the be all and end all of business, right? If value is being created, you will capture some value as well. That's the rationale behind all of this. So even if it's a crowded space, let's say even if it's a commodity space, right? There is always some uniqueness that you can bring in, right? But knowing that, what is my edge, and does that matter to my customer or not? That clear understanding is key. So in our case, what happened was, as I said, early days when we got into this learning, that to corporate learning is very traditional in its approach, right? And technology is not the first option in most cases. It's very high touch in its approach. And so there is a lot of time that we spent on educating people that, hey, there is something called, firstly, digital learning. There's something called experiential learning.
Absolutely.
There's something called simulation that you could do.
Gamified
Learning. So I think we spent a lot of time just educating people. So that I think you should factor in, right? In case you're trying to disrupt a traditional space, it does take time to change mindset. So you need to be ready for it. And for us, we were able to stand out just because of that. Because we were doing something very non-standard, very unique, very differentiated. Some of the products that we developed back then, almost a decade ago, is still selling very, very strongly now. So that's a good testament for the kind of breakthrough that we had even back then. Now we are breaking other ground. New ground. So I think that's essentially what we need to keep in mind. And picking the right kind of early customers, very important, because like I said, the start matters. Who's actually adopting you? This is like the innovation diffusion curve. It says there are innovators, early adopters and all of that, right? Finding your innovators, finding your early adopters, because they also are co-creating your value proposition. Because early days, you may not be very clear. You know your product well, but how it gets adopted and what value they eventually see, that's your learning process. And if you keep your eyes and ears open, you learn along with your customer, the early customers, and then you're confident that okay, this works, and then I can stick to the script, right? Or doesn't work or doesn't scale, I need to change my story. But for that, I think it's a learning phase before that's probably called as product market fit, early stage, right? And once you're clear on the product, then you start scaling that part out. But to your question, even in a commodity space, there is always an opportunity. You can compete on cost, you can compete on service, you can compete on innovation, you can compete on brand name, you can compete on n number of things. But you need to be clear what you're competing on. And it doesn't matter.
Does that really add value to the
end user?
Right. And typically and again, I also come from from this world of HR tech, right? So it's a very unique space, right, where your decision maker is somebody from the HR side, whereas the person who actually will pay you might be from the finance side, right? So it's a bit of both, right? Typically that kind of comes into play. So I think if you could just walk our viewers through that journey. How does that kind of work, right? Because typically if you're selling to the CEO, for example, that this is the persona that I'm selling to, this is what I have to kind of demonstrate, and then obviously when the CEO says fine, we are going for it, and then things start moving, right? But here you have to convince multiple stakeholders,
right? So one of the things is we are in the enterprise space. We sell to large companies, right? Which by default means multiple decision makers, longer sales cycle time, and all of that.
How long, if I were to ask you, how long does it take for you to close?
Average 4 months, 3 to 4 months, I would say, depending on
B2B, enterprise sales, right? 4 months, right? That's typically the sort of number that we are looking at.
That's right. So, and you need to be patient because there are multiples and a lot of surprises happen along the way. Stakeholder moves and what do you do next and all of that stuff. That's all part of the regular sales motion. But in terms of, you're asking a very pertinent question in terms of selling to B2B, that to large enterprises, one needs to be ready for that kind of a sales cycle. And there are multiple stakeholders who hold the key. It's not very obvious who's going to be the influencer, who can be the detractor, and these characters can show up anytime
during the whole process. Maybe right at the beginning or right at the end.
And so surprises are there throughout the process. But then again, this is classic enterprise sales, knowing who your champions are, who the economic buyer or the technical buyer, knowing that landscape well, and deploying the team accordingly, right? One person cannot possibly do everything unless you are selling a small ticket item and one person is able to take a decision, which is very rare. And the other insight that you shared is more and more decision making is moving over to business, right? And business leaders are, and in today's environment also where efficiency is and cost cutting and all of those things happening. So business is, controlling that. But that said, there is a pain point. There are budgets available with learning leaders and HR leaders, but knowing what is that problem they are trying to solve. You can't walk in saying, "Hey, I've got a product. It's a painkiller for everything that you."
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So there is a consultative process. That skill is important.
Right, and you need to have a buy-in of. So I think one interesting another insight, if I can share, anybody can say no, but everybody has to say yes.
Yeah.
That's when the sale will happen.
Yeah.
Right. So that in itself kind of becomes a challenge, because you need to showcase that value and to everybody,
That's
that
right.
whole group.
That's right.
So
And what matters to these different stakeholders could be different.
could be different.
Right,
Somebody
and so-
could be saying it should be ease of use.
Right.
Somebody should be saying it should give me intelligence.
Right.
And so on and so forth. Right.
Which is why once you reach a certain scale with these companies, it's a good idea to have different kinds of people working on those large accounts.
Right.
Anyway, once you get into a large account, the idea is to mine that account, so you need to stay invested in those accounts.
Right.
So having a salesperson, a consulting person, a customer success person, so you get multiple eyes and ears to look at what is going on.
Right.
And information is gold.
Right.
What is happening? What is the decision making cycle? What's the company going through? Are they likely to spend now or not?
Right.
All that is important information. Having enough number of people really helps. And ultimately, how do we add that incremental value? Right, and having those different people, invested in that account gives us so much more insight on. Going back to the same keyword, right? Value. If value is there, people will come to you. Otherwise, there are plenty of other people.
Right.
So that's why I think, and I read this thing. I think it was Subrata Bagchi who spoke about it in a book. I forget the name of the book now. But he says, if your business is all about catching a rabbit, right? So one person is enough. Right? All you have to do is be agile, run along with the rabbit, and the rabbit changes direction, you change direction, and then catch the rabbit. So that's a one-person enterprise, right? So it really depends on your product, the size of the product, and who you're selling to. Maybe one person is enough. But as you scale this a little bit more, and your ticket sizes cross a certain number, then you're catching an elephant. Right? To catch
then you can't do it with one person.
It takes a village to catch an elephant.
Wow, that's well said.
And so you need drummers. And you typically catch an elephant in the night, maybe.
Right.
So you need people who are carrying the torch. People who so it's not just enough if you catch the elephant.
Right.
You need to retrieve that elephant. So it's not enough you close a deal, but you need to service that, which is a different ball game altogether, because large enterprises have their own mechanism internally. They'll have their own standards, and you need to integrate with them. Reporting they want in a certain. So the ability to do all of this yet retain your core, right? Because it's a product platform play, so it's not a services game. So you're not able to go to every organization and do things from scratch. So that push and pull, the tension needs to be managed well. But really, that becomes, once you get into that elephant catching thing, then you get into internal coordination. How do you coordinate internally? Right? Does everyone have the right information to go in front of the customer? And how do you deliver well, close the loop, so that renewal time you're able to showcase that value back again, saying, hey, we promised this and we are here again. We delivered it. What more? Right? How else can we help you? That entire cycle.
It's amazing. Whenever I am, and I'm in the process of speaking with a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Every time, halfway during the conversation, I'm like, why do people do this to themselves? So I think it's such a tightrope, that you're doing, like you just mentioned, right? You're juggling so many things. You're trying to convince people. You have to, once you've sold, you have to kind of, deliver. Then you have to take care of the expectations that, have been sold to the customer. And then you juggle a tightrope internally, manage the team, and then kind of go outside, right? But I guess the reward is worth it, right? So,
absolutely. So I think you're touching upon a very important thing, and especially for me, I've had a pretty long journey here, right? And this question gets asked often, right? Are you sort of exiting this, doing the next one? So for me, I feel that global thing that I started with, I have not fulfilled that mission yet in my own head. So for me, that has to happen, right? And I'm willing to give it all it takes to realize that. But then those the days when you feel the high and the low, and the high, it's part and parcel of this, right? The tightrope walking and near-death experience, and all of that happens, right? But then what one needs to do, I feel, is go back to day one. What is it that sort of prompted you to go start?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what is the mission, right? What would you like to see at the end of all of this, right? What would you like to accomplish?
Right.
Are you there yet?
Right.
No, I'm not there yet. So better get to work.
Yeah.
So I think both the starting point, what made you do this,
right,
and the end goal.
Wow, excellent. Yeah.
And then the journey sort of.
Wonderful thing to say. Yeah. Great, super. I think also entrepreneurship as a journey, right? I think, like you just touched upon, has a lot of, highs and lows, right? I mean, and by the way, it can happen in a day, right? You can start, right. in half a day also. Yeah. You can start the day feeling at the top of the world that, this is the best decision that I've taken. And by lunch or by noon, you think, what have I done and why am I even doing this and all, right? So there's a lot of that happens. And I think what I would like to kind of, also understand from you, or rather hear from your experiences, what have been like the real highs and the real lows that you've seen through the journey, right? I think we all see it, right, in our journey, right? I mean, different kinds of highs and lows. What has been your experience like, right? And how have you dealt with it?
Yeah, so the highs are often not about a particular milestone that we hit that revenue number. It is really seeing the impact of what we are doing, right? When oftentimes we see learners coming back saying, what a mind-blowing experience. I would have never learned this topic in any other way. Thank you for doing this, right? So that's an incredible high. It goes back to reinforce why you started the journey, because you personally have experienced it, you know the power of it. Correct. And when someone else, it's like lighting a candle, right? The light that you have, you just share it with somebody else, and it's learning end of the day, right? And that's the mission and purpose that we have, how do you spread the joy of learning? And we are all, this is something I sort of realized midway through the journey, that we are all work in progress as humans. Right. We are learning one thing or the other. Yeah. When learning stops, we stop evolving. Yeah. So that's how crucial learning is to everybody, right? And so while that, if we are able to play even a small part in people becoming
their
better,
journey.
And so you helped in their journey, right? So helping people succeed is one of our values, right? And so that is a big high, right? And so while all these milestones are great, setting up something in the UK and winning an account there and hitting revenue milestones, all of that is great. But ultimately, the thing that sort of energizes you is also that one moment in time, that shell that they talk about on the seashore, making a difference to that one thing. Right. And I find that that's that one thing that energizes when during the lows as well. Coming to the lows, I wouldn't call it a low in retrospect. That's the nature of learning. There's no failure, there's only learning. Correct. The pandemic was tough, right? Because learning, especially classroom-based learning, came to a grinding halt.
Stop.
60-70% of our numbers back then was coming from there. Right. And so we were like, okay, what do we do now? And this is where the power of culture actually is. And I'm incredibly grateful that we have amazing set of knowledge. We're like, hey, this is our mission, we have to get it done. Right, come what may. And so we had to take some hard measures in terms of, okay, 60-70% of the revenue gone, cost is still there. So how do you handle that? How do we pivot now? And in a way, a crisis also teaches you to find your own essence, to find your own grit. That's what happened, because we were a technology company right from the beginning, but it so happened that the market dynamics demanded that we have the service component of this delivery in classroom and all of that. Right. So the pandemic sort of made us realize that we have a tech platform. We are a tech platform. Why are we not using that, right? So in about a quarter, we said digital is the only way forward. Widely important goal for the entire organization. Whatever we were doing, non-digital, everything now has to become digital. Create the best-in-class experience. It was amazing to see in that one quarter the entire company rallying behind this, saying, we have to get this done. Right. And the lockdown.
And by the way, they would be working remotely. Everything would have been remote, even for you guys, right? Everything.
And so the culture we had established prior to this sort of helped us, right? Because people knew, hey, this is like a genuine mission we are on. We need to get this done. Right. So that one quarter was a turnaround, and by the time the second quarter, lockdown eased up a little bit, and we were able to move around just a little bit, right? By that time, I think digital learning was the only way.
Absolutely.
And people were looking, who's the innovative player out there who can do digital learning? We have Zoom fatigue and all of that. It can't be just a plain.
Correct. Like a person giving lecture training.
Yeah,
lecture
that's another Zoom.
Anyways, people will turn off their cameras and go to sleep and all that. Right.
So we need something more engaging. That was our time. So from that,
amazing.
And luckily for us, it was just a couple of quarters, and we were able to find our feet and come back.
Right.
So that's why I won't call it a low, but it was stressful. It was.
But it's so amazing. You just mentioned that when you started off, you obviously had a bit of an immersive kind of thing. Then you went to the trainer-led kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you again went into the whole digital mode thing, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that is typical of an entrepreneurial journey? You kind of do start something, and then you kind of sort of revisited that probably down the line, and maybe now the time is like this is the time for what your original vision was so many years back.
So in all of this, there are two things that we usually don't hear entrepreneurs talk about: timing and luck.
Right.
Both maybe coinciding as well,
right.
but sometimes we are ahead of the time, right? And so the time that you have taken to come this far,
right.
In many industries, this is a lifetime. What are you doing for 10 years doing this? LinkedIn Learning, for example, lynda.com took 18 years before they got sold to LinkedIn.
Right.
So in some industries, it does take time.
It does take time.
The learning that I have personally had is don't get pressured by it. There are a lot of other companies.
Correct.
They are doing justice to their business models.
Exactly.
I need to do justice to my business model.
Correct.
I can't, like they say, it takes 9 months to produce a baby. You can't do it in 4 months.
Exactly.
I don't know if artificial intelligence is ChatGPT. But if something deserves that amount of time, you have to be patient.
Yeah,
right?
you have to be patient.
So and I have that as a virtue. I'm patient. I'm okay because I'm adding value.
Right.
I go back to that.
Correct.
So and I know that scale will happen. It is happening across different geographies. But then getting your own grit in place. Perseverance, and a lot of things change over time. Technologies change. So are you able to move in an agile, nimble fashion? And to your question, I think some entrepreneurs already start with, okay, this is what I'm doing.
This is what I will,
do, and it's a straight line path.
Right.
For me, it was a lot of discovery.
Right.
Because
also a lot of first principles, right? I mean, you're a first-time entrepreneur, right? You don't come from that ecosystem or background. There are a lot of things that you would be learning as you have kind of gone
so
along
that
as
took
well.
some time in retrospect. Could I have learned some things faster? Maybe I could have. And so from the academic environment to the corporate environment, within the corporate environment, finding our space, getting that initial traction, and in the space, overall, if you really look at corporate learning, it is not a painkiller, it's a vitamin, sometimes even a candy, right? And so ups and downs, this is the budget that people usually take away. Within that space, how do you find your repeatable revenue?
Right.
It is a challenge, right? It is incredibly difficult,
right?
Because companies don't want to sign multi-year contracts. They don't want to give you clarity on what might, because they don't have the clarity.
They don't have the clarity,
right? And more and more companies
can't
commit to anything,
right?
And I don't know if the budget will be there next year. Within that, how do you find your space, right? It is an incredible. So finally, it has taken us time, but now we have that playbook, to sort of do it more repeatably. And so I think it all takes time to establish yourself. Maybe there are other channels like we could have used in the past to turbocharge it, but something like this I think deserved that time also, is how I think about it.
Right. And also I think this whole process of this whole journey is a process of self-discovery as well. Like I said, there are certain things that you would have thought about, well, this is what I will do and this is what I will do. It rarely happens. That's how you kind of, that's what the journey is about. Okay, so you just touched upon it very briefly, but if you could share with us, your first client win, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was at INSEAD, right? I just graduated from the campus, and I hadn't done sales before. I was a techie. But the MBA program sort of taught me some tips and tricks and tactics,
the basic stuff.
But sales is something you learn over time. Either you are born, I'm not a born sales guy, but I think I learned it over time. So I had to literally knock on every door because I was selling to academic folks, right? At INSEAD. I was knocking on my professor's door.
Doors, yeah.
And they were welcoming because I was an alumnus.
Yes.
And I was hanging around in campus when there was nobody else. My batch had graduated and left. I was still sitting on. It was like Amir Khan in that movie.
Yeah.
So I was like that dude who was hanging around. So they were sympathetic. They were like, okay, come.
Okay,
let's
nothing. He's done nothing in life. Yeah, let us at least hear him.
Hear him out. And they had the time to, because it was a summer break at that
Right.
point in time.
Right.
So I was able to pitch ideas saying, hey, have you thought about that? Course was great, but if you had a product here and how do you scale your idea? Some people had published a book, and how cool would it be if we created a simulation or a game around it? Many thousands of people can use it, and that sort of lit their eyes because they have the concept, but they do not have the wherewithal to put all of this together. And I said, hey, I'm your partner. Give me the idea. I'm an MBA, freshly minted from INSEAD. I understand.
Will make it work.
I understand every word you're saying because you've taught me this.
Right.
And so I will convert all of this and come back to you with a product. And 1 or 2 wins happened like that.
Got it.
And then it was like a.
And your
word of
first
mouth.
corporate win that happened probably in
Was
India?
with an IT services company.
Okay.
And that was a big win for us. Right?
I'm
And so
sure, I'm
we were in a small home office. I still remember the decision maker came to our office. It was a small basement.
Okay.
They came and saw, okay, this is the place that these guys are working from. And before they came in, handful of people, right? We broomed the place up, take it up. And otherwise it's a regular startup.
Right.
And so we had to make it look serious. But they saw our hunger. Even today, I'm in touch with the decision maker. Like, what made you pick us, right? We were like a bunch of people sitting in a basement doing stuff. Like the hunger that you showed, the eagerness and the ideas.
Right.
You are willing to do anything it takes. Right. That's the trigger.
Right.
And the trick, I think is in retaining that even when you are big. That's cultural. That's
Right,
the DNA, right? Because
Correct.
sometimes when you grow bigger, process takes over other things.
Right,
But
right.
that hunger to add value,
Right.
show that you are different and
Right.
being different, adding value. So as long as we are staying true to that,
Right.
everything else falls in place. So I think those are, early days of getting a corporate win, and that was a pretty sizable win at that
Right,
point in
right,
time.
right.
We were in a sense of disbelief.
How did you guys celebrate?
It was always a celebration. In fact, we would step out and it was closely knit, right? We would hang around.
How big was your team at that point in time?
Maybe less than 10.
Less than 10 people.
10, 12 people
Wow.
at the time.
So you were less than 10 people and you were able to crack a large corporate deal.
Corporate deal, yeah,
Amazing.
it's possible. And then one thing leads to again. It's one of the most renowned names in the IT services space. And once you crack something like that, the ripple effect happens, right? So that starting point, I think, is very crucial, and I keep going back to that. So it sort of sets a tone because the other thing is the first few customers that you sign up. They become your school. You are learning with them, right? In fact, you should be paying them,
right.
Not the other way around. So working with such a high caliber organization, right? We learned all the processes. Learning for us was coming free.
Right.
How do you do the training? How do you how do you take care of it?
It's not coming even free. They're paying you.
We're paid for it, yeah. And many of the things that I learned in terms of learning as a domain, details matter a lot.
Right.
Because you're teaching people.
Right.
That experience counts for a lot, and there's cognitive diversity, right?
Right.
No two learner looks at the same slide the same way. It's amazing. It's like a movie scene. No two people will look at the same.
Right,
Maybe I'm watching for the comedian in the scene. I'm watching the heroine in the scene.
Right.
But you never know what people are absorbing from that.
Right.
So how do you make sure that what you want to convey actually is what landing?
Yes.
So that involves good understanding of psychology of learners, understanding learning design.
Right.
Lot of it is about details that I picked up from that organization.
Right.
Crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and even today when I get something for review, I have my own benchmark, right? At least 40-50 things I have to be able to identify in that, things that could be better, or questioning everything that is on the screen, right? Why is it there? Right? Is there a reason? Have people thought through that, right? Putting that high bar, then over time when that becomes like the culture of the organization, where people are obsessed about details, then your products are outstanding. Because everyone thinks that for creating great experience, details matter.
Yeah.
So that I learned from that organization.
Right. Wonderful. I think it's been such a great journey for you. Even just I think pat on the back for such a fabulous journey. One more thing that I wanted to kind of touch upon is obviously your business, obviously, like you mentioned, 150 people, right? And I think hiring the right kind of people and bringing the right kind of people into the team like must be a hugely important factor, right, for your growth, right? So how did you go about that? I mean, that's also one of the common questions that I keep getting. How do I hire? How do I identify who are the right kind of people to come and kind of add value to my business? How did you go about it?
Yeah, so even till date, critical roles I get involved in hiring, because I think that's one of the most important things that you can do as a leader. If you made a mistake at that step, after that, training, delivery, coaching the person, performance management, all of that is overhead, managerial overhead, leadership overhead, which will come back and bite you later. So setting a high bar for hiring is super crucial, and the people around you should know that you hold that standard,
right?
And letting others know, hey, this is what I'm looking for, this is where I stand, what does great look like, right? I think that has to be articulated. I think the starting point for all of this is great clarity on what that role is. What do we need? Sometimes we are not very clear about it, and that's also a challenge, because in early days
you might want like somebody to do 10 things together.
So then you are hiring at that stage for attitude, not really for a skill. Learnability as a skill is great. Otherwise, it's attitude. Can you give it everything you've got?
Right.
And many times you would have hired the person, then crafted the role around the person, saying, okay, now you take care. Now we know who you are. Now you take care of it. But as you evolve, it has to become a lot more granular, clear understanding of what is needed, because specialization is the way for scale.
Right.
Everyone doing everything will not allow you to scale.
Right.
So that understanding is crucial, and once that is done, then everybody knowing what does great look like.
Right.
And that's one big part of hiring. The other thing is looking at leading indicators. Have we hired the right person? And sometimes you make a mistake, right? Especially hiring virtually.
Right.
You never know what you're getting. Right, and so
you don't know exactly.
and leading people virtually as well. That's an important thing that organizations have to get right. Because if you let poor performers or poor fits stay over a period of time, that spoils everything. So you need to have a good antenna up for these things, because culture is everything in smaller organizations, right? So knowing what our culture is, what our values are, hiring for values. Is this person a good nollie? That's something that we often ask internally, right? And who's a nollie? We need to understand that. Nollies are givers, nollies are problem solvers, they are doing things for greater good. In general, nice people, they are not jerks. So that is well understood internally. And so if you ask two hiring managers, is this a nollie? You'll usually find good resonance. Then we only see, okay, technical fit.
Let's move forward. And I think coming to your alums and or ex-nollies as we call it, I think some of them are doing some fabulous stuff.
Absolutely.
They've moved on, but they're doing some wonderful stuff, right? So I think and I'm connected with a few of them on LinkedIn, and I still see the same kind of attitude that they were displaying when they were part of
I can't take credit for any of that, but that's again a measure of success, I think, in terms of what you do as a leader is not just for your organization. This is like PayPal, from where multiple other things came out. Are you sowing enough seeds, right? Where greater good can happen. Your own organization is one part of it, but there is an ecosystem you're able to build. If we have done the right thing for people internally, where they've seen, hey, culture can be like this also. Great things can happen without culture not being toxic. And if they are able to do this in respective organizations, places, we have won big time, right?
Absolutely.
So true. And then I've had some people write back to me saying, I faced that challenge, and I was thinking about what you would have done in that situation, or we would have done.
That would have felt so nice.
So nice, right? So those are things that are intangibles, but counts for a lot. Then you're doing the right thing as an organization at a larger scale, greater good kind of a thing. So that's also a measure of success. How many people from Nolscape go out and do other startups and flourish, right? It's a great feeling.
Absolutely. And now obviously you've had a pretty long journey. Where where is Knowlescape right now? And I remember you mentioning that you want to take it global, right?
Yeah,
So I think already 5 countries and then 20 countries you mentioned as
through partners,
partners and all, right? So what's the next big milestone that you are aiming for?
Yeah, getting our US UK story right. Because ultimately in our space 60-70% of the overall budgets in L&D would come from those geographies.
Okay.
Or Europe in general. So we need to succeed there. Right. So going deeper into those geographies and a lot of product market fit kind of questions there as well, because every country is different in the way they consume learning. So again, startup within a startup, understanding that and making sure that the ecosystem works fine. So that's essentially what keeps me going at the moment. So that's a big priority. And strategic partnerships are a big priority. Non-linear growth. Playing in the ecosystem well. And our own product story. Right. So and there is a breakthrough we've had our own AWS moment. So we are, externalizing a platform that we internally use to create these immersive products that we are able to offer to our partners.
Wonderful.
So that's driving growth as well. We are able to get into multiple different domains. So those are, I think, some key pillars that we are acting on.
Got it. Superb. Any pieces of advice that you would like to give to young entrepreneurs? You're a seasoned champ and you've been around for quite some time and one of the leading lights in the HR space. So and not just pertaining to HR, but generally from an entrepreneurship, business building perspective, anything that you would like to share?
Yeah, so few of what you said is true, like I've been around for enough, but not sure about a champ or a leading light yet. I hope I continue to work and ultimately deserve that description. But I wouldn't say advice yet, but I think a lot of entrepreneurship, while you're operating in the outside world trying to do stuff, also comes from your space within. Your deepest desires, your deepest motivators, you need to be clear on that, because you will be challenged every day on that. What is it that you really want to do? Right? Do you want to scale or run a boutique shop? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Go global, go local? Many of those decisions that you end up making come from some idea that is deep inside you. Like for me, the fact that I wanted this to be global. Why? Because I saw how much of an impact. So that experience sort of shaped the way I thought about business, right? And similarly, there are life experiences that every entrepreneur goes through that shapes the way, their outlook towards what they are trying to do. Sometimes you face a situation that comes into a little bit of a conflict, then knowing what is it that you want to do, that situation, gives you clarity for the right decision to be made, where you will not regret what you will do. Right? That clarity needs to come from within, because everyone around you is looking up to you saying, clarity, right? Can you give me clarity? Where do you get that clarity from? From within.
From within. Yeah.
So as you go outside, go within as well.
Right.
So that's an important one. Self-awareness.
So self-awareness, reflection. Maybe throw in a little bit of meditation if it helps, right? So I think those things are also very important. Very important. And by the way, I'm realizing earlier, entrepreneurs never, or rather rarely used to do it. But now this new breed of entrepreneurs that are coming through, they're there. They are aware. They understand the importance of fitness, right? And introspection and awareness as well.
And I was going to talk about fitness as well. Entrepreneurship can be a marathon. It can be a short sprint as well.
Yes.
In case it is a marathon, you need to have the stamina and energy and the passion to run that. Play that long game, as Simon Sinek would say, that infinite game. Are you able to play this forever? Are you able to do it? Right? And that requires certain intensity to be demonstrated day in, day out. You cannot say, today I don't feel like it, or this quarter I don't feel like it. The game is over. So are you able to bring that intensity day in, day out? It is demanding on yourself, on your health. And so developing that ecosystem around you, it's positive, that's encouraging, that is motivating. It could be an advisory network that you have, a mentor or a coach. I would highly recommend that. somebody who you can lean on. Because oftentimes you're faced with a challenge, it's all on you.
Right.
Right. And at least having a sounding board saying, hey, I'm getting into this kind of a decision. What's the right thing to do?
Right.
Right. Or it could be trusted people within your network, your founding team.
Right.
It's a good idea to surround yourself with people like that. But ultimately, I think it's also about your fitness, your physical fitness, your energy, your mental fitness. Are you agile, sharp when you need to be?
Correct.
And emotional.
Also, it just opens up your mind, right? I mean, if you're fit, if you're active, does not mean that you end up working like 14-15 hours a day. No, it's about the mental agility as well, right? I mean, if you're fit, if you're active, you're able to take decisions faster. You know, I remember when I kind of went on my own fitness journey, and when I lost weight, it was like a fog had kind of cleared from my mind.
Right.
I was able to see things clear. I mean, I'm not kidding. I mean, it's just such a funny thing to actually put it like that. But it was like, suddenly I started seeing clearly. I started making decisions faster. Right? It just
so
happened.
your physical fitness obviously impacts your mental fitness
Absolutely,
as well. And I say this because ups and downs are part of the game.
Right.
It's not always rosy. So as you go through ups and downs, are you able to stay steady?
Right.
Right. This is almost like Shaolin training. Right. How are you able to stay steady? That matters a lot, because your ups and downs otherwise can impact the team, impact your family, impact others around you, knowingly or unknowingly it impacts. So I think that steadfastness is very crucial.
Right. Super. Yeah, I think it's been fabulous. Hearing your story. I think and a lot of first principle thinking, as I can kind of see. I think you've come a long way, and I'm sure there is a long way to go. Thank you so much for your time. It's been really a pleasure kind of having you as part of the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show, and I also feed on energy of people like Utkarsh, always positive, always giving. In fact, he's an Ollie, right? Thinking of greater good. He's a teacher, right? And so many of the things that we speak about at Northscape in terms of who's an ideal Nolly, he checks all the boxes. So always, when I get an opportunity to interact with Utkarsh, I don't miss that chance. Right? So thanks for being there.
And I think probably that's the reason why we connect so well. Thank you for putting it like that. So great. Thank you so much. And hope you guys enjoyed. And like always, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and keep watching for a lot more. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.